What have I got today? Capacitors. These are electrolytic capacitors, but apparently they hold charge or energy, whatever you want to call it. I think the equation says charge. So you put some voltage across that, they fill up with charge, and then you can use that energy, charge that's in these to power something else. Marvellous. They don't all look like this. Some of them look like this. These are little polyfilm capacitors. These are electrolytics because they have to be connected in a specific way. You've got a positive lead and a negative lead. You can tell it's negative because it's got a little stripe on the side telling me that that's the negative side. But there are many other capacitors that you can get, many different types. There's tantalum, there's ceramic disc, there's a whole slew of different materials that are used to make capacitors that can be used in different environments, different circuits. So what I'm going to do is have a quick look at one of these electrolytics. I'm going to put some voltage across it, put some charge in there, some energy, and then discharge it and light up an LED. So let's go and have a look at that. So here we are, we've got a capacitor on the board here. Only the one capacitor, because we're just going to have a look to see how quickly it charges up, how much it takes, how much time it takes to put energy into the capacitor. So what I've done is I've got a multimeter to look at the voltage across the capacitor, and this one is to see the amount of current going into the capacitor. And what we should see is the voltage rising, and the rate at which it rises slows down, and the current will be reducing, and the speed at which it reduces is going to slow down as well. I've only got 3 volts on the power supply, just to start off with. So we're going to charge up this capacitor. And there you go. Started at what? 400 milliamp? Well, it's not milliamps because that's a 2 milliamp range, so that's 400 microamps. And the voltage is quickly rising. As you see, it is actually slowing down. Even that may not appear it, but as you can see, as the voltage rises, the current reduces. Because as the capacitor fills up to the voltage, the source voltage, it can't hold anymore. At least that's the way I see it. See, it's nearly at 3 volts and it's slowed down now, but it's almost there. Be there in a moment. There you go, 3 volts, and the current, that's effectively on 4 microamps. So that's a really small current. But it means, is there any current in the capacitor? Well, yeah, because what I'm going to do now is turn off the supply. That'll drop slightly because it's not a perfect capacitor, and we've got some multimeters across it, so they're sort of slightly drawing some of that energy. Now what we'll do is connect this up, now going through this LED, and the capacitor will now discharge through that other circuit. You can see the LED came on, it's dimming away quite quickly. 500 microamps initially, very quickly dropped off, and the voltage quickly dropped down, but it's only dropped down so far because it still has voltage in the capacitor, but there's no current. The voltage has got no current to drive around the circuit anymore because the LED has used it. Also, the LED takes a certain amount of current to work, and a certain voltage to work. So once you've used up the amount of energy that's in the capacitor, there's no more, but there is still some voltage left on there. But I can get rid of that voltage just by shorting out the legs. There you go. Very, very simple that. So all we're doing, and there is a resistor on the input just so it gives me the ability to see the charging rate. Could put a bigger resistor in there, which would mean that it would take longer to charge this capacitor. So let's turn up the voltage out. Let's do 6 volts. On it goes. See, that was sort of 700 microamps. 3 volts, nearly 4 volts. Come up to 5 volts. 120 microamps. You can, if you want, if somebody wants to do it, is to time it. You can time how long it takes depending on your voltage and your capacitance, and see what the current is at different times. So like a second, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and see how long it takes. And then you can plot that down. You can draw the graph. So you can see that as the voltage rises, it slows down, and as the current drops, it slows until you meet the source voltage, and the current is effectively at 0 through the circuit. But it's not gone, it's now stored in the capacitor. So 6 volts, let's turn that off, and we shall light up the LED. Notice how that stayed on for a bit longer. It's because obviously we put a bigger voltage across the capacitor, so it's been able to hold up more energy inside it. This one is rated at 25 volts, so as long as I don't go above 25 volts, then it should still be stable and able to cope with whatever we put into it. Above 25 volts, it's likely to explode. As you can see, even with putting more voltage in, we've still got a certain amount of voltage that's left across the capacitor after we've discharged it, even though there's no current flow anymore, because that voltage isn't enough to push anything round the circuit, and we've probably used up effectively the current, that is the charge that's been created in the capacitor. So let's just discharge that fully while shorting out the legs on the capacitor, and let's take this up to 12 volts and see how long this takes. Only 1.5 milliamps there. The voltage is coming up real quick. 9 volts, 10 volts. The current's dropping. And the voltage is now slowing down, and the current is slowing as well. Current flow slowing, should I say. Nearly at 12 volts. Only got 50 microamps of current flow now. You can see how this has got getting really slow in charging now, so the voltage is slowed right down. But nearly there, nearly at 12 volts. My power supply actually says 12.22 volts, so it might rise just above 12 volts. As you see, the current is almost negligible, really. So what we'll do is we'll turn that off, connect the circuit over so we can discharge the capacitor through the LED. There you go. So 1.5 milliamps, very quickly discharged very, very quickly. It's a nice and bright LED for a very short period, and again, as you can see, the current's all but gone and we're back down to that sort of 1.5 volts, but there's no current to push around the circuit because the charge within the capacitor is now being used up in the circuit. So we'll just discharge that fully. So there you go. Very simple, very basics of a capacitor. It holds a charge. You put a voltage across it, it charges up with energy, and then you use that energy to turn something on. Of course, this is a DC circuit, and in the real world you wouldn't be turning it on, filling it up, disconnect it, turning it on something else. You'd have it in a continuous circuit that was doing a particular purpose. So this is just a demonstration to show how it does charge up and discharges. Simple as. So there you go. Just a capacitor being charged up and then discharged. Very simple. No maths today. I will have to get into the maths, I suppose, at some point. Next video, start having a look at the more technical aspects of a capacitor, and so I can understand a bit better. But yeah, this time it was just taking a capacitor, putting some energy into it, and then using that energy. Nice and simple. There you go. So if you like this video, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.